Good evening all, and welcome. Before the video begins, I would just like to announce that I have released a new video on my second channel. It's pertaining to the unboxing of a certain loot crate. Now, if you've never heard about it, I do Harry Potter content over on my second channel. And it would really mean a lot to me, even if you don't intend on sticking around, if you could just show me a bit of support and check out my latest video over on that channel. It really helps me out. But even if you don't, that's cool too. I'll leave the link in the description nonetheless. But without further ado, it's time to get comfortable and let the darkness take control. I was riding around on my bike in winter, looking for places to explore. My hometown was a big industrial East Coast city, known for their brass manufacturing. In the southern portion of the city, there were lots of factories, and where there are factories, there are houses for the workers. Across the street from a brass works I had visited dozens of times, I noticed a house that was very vacant and obviously abandoned. It was 3 stories tall, with asphalt siding, shingles coloured in a deep red, brown beige, colours that screamed 1970s. The first 2 floors had every window busted out, and even had the sash weight from the windows ripped out and scavenged for the scrap iron. But the 3rd floor, all the windows were intact. Intrigued, I made my way into the building. Very easy to do. Not only were there no windows, there were no back doors either. Only the front door remained. Walking through the building was not easy though, because the entire apartment was covered waist deep in garbage bags. Eventually I made my way to the stairwell and got up to the 2nd floor. I was met with the same situation. The entire apartment filled with garbage. I worked my way up to the back porches, where there are usually stairs connecting all 3 floors. This proved to be the case, and I wound up my way to the 3rd floor porch. When I got up there, I tried the door and found that it was locked. But as soon as I looked away from the door, I saw that someone had taken a heavy-duty orange extension cord and grafted it to the power lines coming from the nearby telephone poles. The cord had obviously been there a while, because the part of the cord that was exposed to the sun had bleached a pale yellow. The rest of the dingy orange cord went into the house through a hole drilled in the wall. So I thought to myself, okay, this place might have power. Interesting. Since I couldn't open the back door, I went back to the 2nd floor apartment and waded through the trash until I found the stairs to the 3rd floor in the front of the building. I followed the stairs up, and as I approached the door, I started to feel that something wasn't right. It was warm, not just because I was out of the winter wind and in an enclosed space. It was full warm. It was physically warmer. I approached the door and turned the knob slowly with my gloved hand. I made no noise, but it turned completely. As I slowly pushed the door open, as quietly as I could, I was hit with a blast of heat that fogged up my glasses. Inside the cracked open door, I could see that there was indeed power. As I opened the door the rest of the way, I found myself in a kitchen with eaten food on the table, used and a still smoking cigarette in a cup, and a gas kitchen stove with all 4 burners on high. That explained the heat. I stood in the middle of the kitchen and looked around. Since it was an attic apartment, it was very small. The kitchen was no more than 10 by 10, and because of the staircase leading into it, the room was shaped like an L. There was a living room off the side that was darkened, a single bathroom, and to my left towards the front of the house was a single bedroom. It was there that I heard sounds. People talking. I stood still in the doorway listening for a minute, until I realized that I was hearing Judge Judy. I worked my way towards the bedroom and could see the television playing in the corner through the partly opened doorway. When I reached the doorway, I opened it slightly and looked inside, ready to run if I saw someone in there. I didn't, but what I saw was kind of worse. The bedroom was barely larger than the bed it was in. The television was crammed into the corner, stacked on top of some milk crates. There were some damaged computer speakers and other electricals that could tell had been salvaged from the dumpster behind Office Max. Being somewhat of a veteran dumpster diver myself, there were more than one set of speakers. Some even had subwoofers with them. But there was also an old VCR stacked inside the crates, with cables going both into the TV and into the other corner of the room. I followed the cables and found more crates filled with camera batteries and chargers and an old TEAC CD/DVD duplicator. And on top of the top crate was a semi-bent tripod. Things were starting to click at this point, but turning back to the bed clinched it for me. The bed had no blankets, only a single pillow and a bedsheet on a mattress, a sheet that had red splotches towards the center of it. As I turned to start heading back, I noticed handcuffs hanging off the bedpost. That was it. I walked as quietly but as quickly as possible back down the stairwell, and instead of going through the apartments below again, I took it straight down to the bottom floor, where I found the front door unlocked. I got out of there as fast as I could, took my bike, and rode off with a sigh of relief. 3 months later, the house burnt down. A buddy of mine and I were exploring an old factory that was shut down for poisoning the water supply in the area 30 years before. The area was contaminated with lead, and the factory was left pretty much unchanged aside from being practically gutted of machines. Inside the maintenance/locker room area, there was a long hallway with doors and various rooms. It was pitch black inside, even in broad daylight. We navigated the corridors with flashlights, and the air smelled of mold and felt cold and damp. But the ground was dry and dusty. The lead paint was peeling off the ceiling. The thick flakes of paint looked like the room had been feathered. A lot of the flakes had fallen and were littering the floor, and they made a satisfying crunch as we crept through. Inside one of the rooms, there was a sliver of light bleeding out of an old double door and spilling into the hallway. Naturally, this caught our attention as we eased inside. The light turned out to be sunlight, as these doors led outside. The room was their laundry room. I assume it was for uniforms. There was a huge dryer still in there that we ventured one of us could fit in. I volunteered and climbed in. To my surprise, it still spun freely as the bearings had remained in good health throughout the years. I braced myself and told my buddy to try and spin it. I wagered I could survive a few revolutions unscathed. We spent a few minutes taking turns spinning around in the big dryer. Being teenagers, This was as much fun as we'd hoped for in this creepy old factory. My turn had come around again, and just as I had begun to rock back and forth gaining momentum, I looked to my buddy for the extra push, but he didn't help. His demeanor instantly changed and he was pale, almost shaking like he'd seen a ghost. "Shh," he whispered in a panic. "What's the matter? Listen. Do you hear that?" I hurried up the dryer before coming to complete silence and lending an ear. From the pitch-black corridor comes a familiar sound from only moments ago. Crunch, crunch, crunch. It was the paint chips on the ground getting crunched very slowly. Someone, or something, was creeping towards us in the pitch-black catacomb-like hallways of this decrepit factory. We'd been everywhere in the factory, and not a soul or even a small animal was to be seen. The footsteps did not slow down or speed up, but they were getting louder, and we both looked at each other in disbelief and utter terror. Who could this be? What could this be? Why are they sneaking up on a cacophony of creaking dryers and laughter in the pitch-black unknown? There was no time to entertain these questions. I turned to the double doors from where the sunlight was leaking and heaved myself onto them. They gave out an awful noise amidst the temporary silence and crackled off paint but didn't budge. My buddy joined in, and finally they began giving way. We resorted to kicking them for the final blow, and they burst open. I'd never been so happy to see sunlight, dead grass and rusty fences in my life. We bolted, never looking back, never going back, and never knowing what we would have encountered in that wretched, dark and creepy corridor. I live in a pretty sizable town near a major city. In my town, there's train tracks that are still pretty active to this day that I still wait on my way home. Anyway, there's a part where the highway in my town and the railroad intersect, and near there is an abandoned prison. It's been there before I was ever born, but pretty much out of sight, and not many people knew about it. My friends knew about it, because one of them was active in urban exploration, and has explored abandoned factories and buildings of this sort in the major cities near our town. So, when he heard there was a place we can explore right here in our town, we jumped at the opportunity and decided to go with a team of 3. Me, a childhood friend, and the urban explorer. It was my first time going on something like this, and I was pretty excited. But when I found out how to get there, it was pretty sketchy. See, the railroad that's near that prison is also near a neighborhood that was made with a fairly new development at around 2010. To get to the prison, we had to park in the cul-de-sac of this neighborhood and walk past a ditch into the flat area of undeveloped land. There's a ton of high grass obstructing the dirt road to the prison, but it was evident that there was indeed a path because of multiple no trespassing signs and the like, warning us not to go in. We ignored these signs and walked the path for what seemed like 2 miles. After the path, there was just flat land, and we could see a concrete road extending out to greet us, but still short by a couple of yards. When we got into the main part of the prison, I saw an overgrown greenhouse that was maybe used to store things, some guard towers with barbed wire around them, and smaller houses that I think may have been used as classrooms or infirmaries perhaps. We decided to explore different houses one by one, starting with the classroom. It was gutted of all furniture, but had a blackboard with names written on it. Seeing those names gave me chills that never left me the entire time I was there. But what sealed the deal was the storage room in the back. I never said anything to my friends at the time, but I felt as if something was there looking back, yet I couldn't see it because there was no light, as we left for the prison in the late afternoon. Considering the walk it took to get there, we started exploring near night. It gave me the creeps, and I stayed outside while they decided to explore, but those names on the board wouldn't get out of my head, and it made the feeling more authentically knowing that there were people at one point. If they were alive or dead, God only knows. We ventured further into the prison yard and found that we were surrounded by small brick houses with furniture thrown out front. Going into them, we found much of the same: broken glass, graffiti, drawers full of documents with names and other personal information. The most interesting thing we found were the firecrackers and fast food wrappers. But as interesting as it was equally disturbing because it showed us signs that people had been here recently. All I could hope for is that they had the same intent as us. Now all of this was normal, up to the point that something struck a chord with me. In a small house we explored, there was a broken tile on the floor, and peeking out of it was a document. I picked it up and thought nothing of it at the time, but when I put it back down and walked out the house, the energy of that place felt odd. It's something that happened to me before, and I can't convince you to believe me, but you have to take my word. But sometimes when I interact with items, I get weird feelings about them. It happened to me with my family keepsake, and the same thing happened in this instance. The way I can describe it is that it's a feeling of melancholy. Something sad happened here, but also I feel that it is not intending ill will. Whatever it is, it allowed us to keep exploring as long as we intended to keep things as they are, and it actually wants the story to be heard. The prison shouldn't be kept so hidden, as actions are needed to either take or preserve the story of it, or put it to better use. I didn't say anything to my friends, because I wanted to keep the adventure light-hearted, but they obviously knew I was being reserved after that. I was trying to be respectful of the energy there, because I knew the minute someone screwed around, that this energy would snap. It was getting pretty late at this point, and all that was left to explore was the prison building itself. The main hall wasn't interesting, pretty much gutted of all furniture and empty rooms. But it did have the original wood intact, which is cool to see. Walking further down, there was a hall with the local government logo from decades ago. But at least, that's what I think, because it looked drastically different from what country it is. The striking part was that I swear that there was a gang graffitied on the wall, from pretty big gangs that are commonplace in the US and parts of South America. I thought it wasn't too strange, but after all, this place was secluded and pretty much anything could go down here. But it also meant that at any point people could show up, and who knows what might happen next. Next to the graffiti was probably the thing that scared me the most: a detailed pentagram. While saying this, I have found pictures of the walls that people had taken recently, but the pentagram wasn't among the graffiti. I wouldn't be surprised if a ritual went down here, but at this point I'm hoping it wasn't a sacrifice or spell or anything. We reached the end of the hall and were stopped by a locked bar door. You know, like one of those old Western movie type ones? Well, my urban explorer friend, being the idiot he is, handed me the camera and said, "Take a pic of me pretending to be stuck behind bars. It'll be funny." And right when he stepped to pull the bars and position his face, a loud crash reverberated from the prison. A giant glass window shattered from deeper in, and we couldn't necessarily see it because the door was locked. Not like they were trying to investigate it anyway. At that point, I felt the energy again. It wasn't mad, but definitely felt as if the peace wasn't the same. Maybe it was mad at my friend. Pretty much mocked the prisoners that used to live here, and the names of the people on the documents, and the names on the blackboard, and all of that. But I felt no ill will towards me. I just felt like whatever protection we were given before, we had lost it now. And all I could mutter was, "Let's go, guys. I don't feel safe." And we'd left. Walking back on the beaten path, I felt as though there was something seeing us out of the prison, waiting for us to leave. But when I looked back, I saw nothing. The whole feeling washed over me again. Melancholy, sadness, as if to say the energy wanted me to not completely abandon it. We got back to the car, and I recalled what I felt to my friends, but they didn't believe it. And they recounted how cool it was to see old documents and equipments used in prisons. But for me, I was relaxed kinda. My mum likes museums a lot, but that one required respect for the exhibits being displayed. That night, I decided to look deeper into the story of the prison and take a quick Google search, which auto-corrected my initial query with haunted prison. Well, there you have it. There was a Wikipedia page that also gave more background info on the person, and turned out the story was way deeper than I thought. The prisoner here was mainly African American. It was opened in 1909, during a time when Reconstruction affected much of the US. Some federal worker was conducting an excavation and found a human bone that was not recent, and it led to a burial ground with more than 95 bodies. To this day, I have never felt so excited and frightened at the same time in my life as I did on the night me and my friends decided to visit a huge abandoned asylum. A few years ago, I was still a student at Newcastle University. Life was great, as me and my friends could pretty much do exactly what we wanted, and when we wanted. So this story started when a friend of mine had got a bit bored and had come across this abandoned mental asylum online. Situated in Morpeth, St. George's Asylum was a classic Victorian-looking asylum with huge, extensive mazes of corridors and creepy rooms. There was a huge tower which loomed over the asylum, and it could be seen for miles, climbing out of a large forest at the top of a hill. God knows what had actually gone on at that place, but I am glad I only visited it as a curious student and not a patient. So one day after university, me and my friends had planned to go to Morpeth to check out the asylum for ourselves. We knew that a lot of it had already been demolished, and that development works were already being undertaken. However, this did not stop us, as I knew a significantly large area remained abandoned, and I had convinced everyone it would be worth it. Around 7 p.m, 3 of us set off to the train station. It was a short but pleasant train journey, as we could see Newcastle disappear behind us, and the view became increasingly countrified. As we arrived to Morpeth, we decided to grab some beers and wait until dusk before we made our entry. We had to walk out of the little town for about a mile before we saw a slip road surrounded by forests on either side. After a long climb up a very steep hill, we had arrived and finally seen what we had come for. This place was huge. The battered red brick complex of buildings were all interconnected and were surrounded by high metal fences. On these fences, I had noticed the severe warnings and patrol dog signs that were hanging on almost every available place along the fence perimeter. The asylum stood shamefully as it was being demolished by some development company, but we had spotted an access point about 100 meters away. We sat for a while in a nearby field and drank our beers until we picked up the courage to attempt an entry just as it was turning dark. We walked the perimeter until we found a gap in the fence, and without warning, we all sporadically just climbed through it and made sprint through the 100-meter gap between us and the asylum. We were heading for the smashed-out door that was clearly visible. We ran the distance as quickly as we could, through mud holes and piles of rubble, until we reached the opening and clambered through and up into the asylum. Looking back now, I realized that we had entered at a point which leads straight into the heart of the complex. The place was an absolute mess, with smashed cups and documents everywhere. Chairs stood alone facing back walls in rooms, and we could see where patients would have been living. The corridors were arched and went on for as far as the eye could see in almost every direction on the bottom floor. In some ways, it was a shame, because we knew that if we had gone about a year beforehand, there would have still been more than double what was currently left. Anyway, we continued to explore the labyrinth of corridors and rooms, but at the same time, we were beginning to get a little too comfortable. We had begun flashing our phones for pictures and making a fair amount of commotion. After a good 40 minutes of wandering, we decided we needed to go in order to catch the last train back. We were about to leave through the door we had entered through, and my friend noticed a light, which I had thought was coming from my other friend's flashlight. My mate immediately told my other mate to turn off his flashlight. It was at this exact point that our hearts began to sink to the bottom of our chests. When my friend turned off his, there was still a light coming from the end of the corridor. We were not alone. We decided to make a run for the nearest stairway and wait until the light went away. We all were absolutely crapping ourselves at this point, as the light was scanning across the corridor and was no further than 10 meters from us, right at the open entrance where we needed to go. I could barely breathe, as I knew people had been caught by patrol dogs at this place before. We stood there for 10 minutes, absolutely frozen. For whatever reason that night, the light stopped scanning and it began to fade away. If it was a security guard, we all knew that he had definitely seen us and had most likely decided not to pursue us. If we were scared, I could not imagine what the security guard must have been thinking or feeling. In a hospital of that size and state, I would be absolutely terrified to patrol it on my own. Shortly after the light had faded, one of my friends decided to make a run for it. Me and my other mate followed and made the 100-meter dash across the open land back to the safety of the outer fence. We could not see the flashlight anywhere, but I'm almost certain it was a security guard who could have had a massive patrol dog by his side. We did not look back and got the hell out of the fenced perimeter. Inconveniently, my friend had dropped his phone while running in the asylum, so we had to go back to the grounds to find it. He quickly found it, and we began to jog back to the station. We were all ecstatic and did not stop talking about it for the next 3 days. It was by far the most excited and lucky I had ever felt in my entire time at university. Who knows what would have happened had we been caught. I am a 20-year-old male from a town called Doncaster in the UK. This story happened a couple of weeks ago, when I had recently got into an activity called urban exploring, which, for those of you who don't know, is basically just exploring abandoned facilities and taking photos. This story took place on my first real experience of urban exploring. I had been looking on the web for places near me, as I didn't want to go far, as I was going to be doing it alone. After an hour or two of searching, I had found the perfect location. An abandoned mansion only a few minutes away called Ivy Manor Farm, which I was frankly surprised I'd never heard of before. A little backstory to the home. It was occupied until the late 1900s. I think it was owned by a male psychiatrist who departed the mansion after a foul spell in his career after releasing a woman who he believed to be sane. However, upon release, she stabbed and killed a girl in the local town. The backlash caused the owner to just leave the mansion intact to escape imprisonment. I'm not 100% sure about the details, but if you Google Ivy Manor Farm Hampole, I'm sure you'll be able to find the details yourself. Anyway, I decided I would go the following day, as by the time I had found the location, it was already pretty late, and I was tired. The next day, I decided I would go to the mansion at dusk, as the mansion is located alongside a main road, and I wasn't 100% sure on the laws of urban exploring. Around 7 PM, I decided I would start the journey to the house. It was only a 15-minute drive, so I knew I would get there while it was still a bit light in the sky. About halfway through my journey while listening to the local radio, the heavens opened and the rain began to bounce off the ground. I just hoped the building still had a functioning roof. I pulled up to the mansion on time at around 7:15. Due to the rain, it was cast, and the plan of getting here during light was out the window. I pulled around the corner, and my car was out of sight from the main road. I sat in there for about 5 minutes hoping the rain would pass, but I had no such luck. The rain continued to fall, and I decided to brave the elements and get out of my car. I put my hood up and made my way around the corner to the house. As I got in front of the house, a convoy of cars made its way past, so I decided to wait until the last one, and then I jumped the fence, as I'm quite a paranoid person. I entered the house through the front door. The fixtures and fittings were old and broken, both due to natural causes and local kids, due to the numerous tags and graffiti that littered the walls. I decided to work my way from top to bottom, and I made my way up the cobblestone stairs and turned left, as the corridor to the right didn't look too stable. I entered a room that had a creepy feel to it, but I couldn't put my finger on what gave me this feeling. But I just marked it down to the fact it was the unknown age that gave me the feeling. The one weird thing I found about the roof is that it looked perfectly plastered and untouched, to say how long it had been derelict. I didn't want to go too far into the room, as I wasn't sure if the floors were stable. So, slightly disappointed to the lack of interesting fixtures, I made my way downstairs to the rest of the house. It was pretty bland apart from the back of the house, as there was an abandoned swimming pool that was full of vegetation and rats. It almost looked like a scale model of a rainforest, and more deep in concentration of taking photos of the pool. A rhythmic and continuous sound came from the inside, and a feeling of what I can only describe as utter dread washed over me. The primal instinct of fight or flight came over me, and me, being a 6'2" stocky male, I chose to get the hell out of there, despite me not being able to find the car which I had seen on the internet. I made my way through the maze-like rooms until I reached the kitchen, when a sound started to accompany the clicking sound. It was laughing, but not your average laughing, but some psycho straight out of a movie type laughing. I started choking up, holding back tears, and looking down the doorway leading to the main room where the door was located. I could see a warm glow, and was both terrified and intrigued. I reluctantly edged round the corner through a small gap in the floor, and it was the only room I hadn't been to in the basement. Through the gap, I could see a single tea light candle flickering in the cool breeze that whistled through the house. Slightly relieved, as the house had now fallen quiet, I crouched down to see what was through the hole, and my blood ran cold, as in the cellar there was a man in nothing but a bathing costume, staring at the now dying candle. I jumped back and knocked an old gas canister, and suddenly the man span towards the stairway up to the room. It was at that moment that the candle must have gone out, from what must have been the air, as how fast the man span, and the house fell into darkness. I slowly made my way up, trying to make as little noise as possible, when suddenly I heard the chair fall over with force in the cellar. I bolted through the door and over the fence. Once over, I shot around the corner, got into my car and looked to the mirrors. I hadn't been followed. I was safe. So I started the car and pulled to the end of the road. Curious and somewhat stupid, I decided to turn left, which would lead me back to the front of the building. As I drive by, my hair stood on end, as there was a man in the doorway just waving. However, the worst thing was I also saw two men in the upstairs window leading to the room that I explored by myself. I really hope to not encounter those chaps again. I am a 24-year-old male who was born and raised in northern New England. I grew up hearing all the scary stories and urban legends that haunted my dreams. But there was one local legend that everyone in my high school knew about: Monkey Town. Monkey Town was supposed to be a Christian retreat camp. You'd have to take this road in between a funeral home and a cemetery, down a big hill, and you'd enter what would look like the set from The Village, 2004. It was a big circle of old-style houses, with a big white church in the middle. I'll describe it a bit more later in the story, but it was always a dare to see how far you could walk down into the camp without chickening out. I remember a couple of times in middle school, a few friends and I made it halfway down the hill and chickened out. The year was 2011. It was junior year. I had just gotten my license on my first car, a classic Chevy Blazer. One night I was driving around with two friends, one who went to the same high school as me, and one who did not, Bessie and Kale. Bessie and I thought it might be fun to take Kale down to Monkey Town and see what happens. So the three of us hopped into my Blazer, and there we went. I remember putting on some of the instrumental music from Halloween to set the mood, and how dumb was I. As we got down the hill, mind you, we were in my car the entire time, we made our way around the circle, mesmerized by the entire community separated from society. One thing that stuck out was this red light at the top of the church steeple. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement. That's when I remember thinking, no way. I quickly turned my head to my left, and I see a giant man in overalls running at full speed towards my car. The messed up part about this is that the man was carrying a bat or tool of some kind. I slammed on the gas, and we got the hell out of there. The three of us couldn't believe what had just happened. I'm pretty sure we just went back to my house to recover from the scare. We passed out, and all was well. The next day I was chilling with another friend, James, and his girlfriend, Sadie. I had told them about last night's events, and they were sure as hell didn't buy it. Me, a 17-year-old teenage boy, wanted to prove them wrong. So we all jumped into my Blazer and headed back to Monkey Town. This time my Blazer was full. We'd picked up two other girls who coincidentally had the same name, and another buddy of mine, Joe. I made James drive my Blazer as I sat shotgun. As we all headed down, the tension rose. We got halfway around the circle until one of the girls started screaming. This time, there were at least 5 men running at the car, and 3 of them definitely had weapons. James didn't know what to do. It's like he was frozen. The men were yelling at us to get out of the car. They were legitimately shaking my car back and forth, and I remember being crouched down so far in the seat as if that did anything. Finally, James slammed on the gas and peeled out of there. As I began taking all my friends home, I got a call from my mother. Apparently, 2 police officers were in my kitchen. One of the Monkey Town civilians had called the police and told them we tried to run them over. What bullcrap. I was furious. We raced home to my house to explain to the officers what actually happened. All in all, the cops really didn't have too much interest. No crime was committed. And to this day, I can't help but think what would have happened if we would have gotten out of the car. What kind of Christian retreat camp is that? Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. I hope that you did enjoy tonight's stories. For all of those of you who applied to become moderators, I'm going to reply tomorrow probably, just to give the rest of you guys a little bit of time to catch up. If you haven't already and you'd like to become a moderator, feel free to drop me an email. Just make sure you say comment moderator in the email subject line and explain why you want to become a comment moderator. I did say yesterday why we needed some. So if you haven't heard that, skip to the end of yesterday's video and find out. So yeah, if you'd like to, just be sure to do that. And I'll get back to you guys tomorrow. Also, it would really mean a lot to me if you guys could check out my video on my other channel. Yeah, I'd really appreciate it. It is at the top of the description. So, yeah, I hope that you do. It also includes a face reveal for me and for Pandora if you haven't seen that already. But anyway, for now guys, I'm gonna sign off. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.
Instagram is a popular platform to become famous in a short period, but this craving to be popular can turn into madness, because I have seen that, and that's why I'm here today to tell you the story of my daughter who took social media too seriously. Sophia is my only daughter. When my husband left me for another woman, she became my world. I moved to Florida for a fresh start. I took a job in an advertising company. Sophia grew up to be a beautiful girl. I still remember her being nervous on her first day of high school, but I knew she will get along, and she did with time. Sophia became one of the most popular girls in school. Teenage is such a confusing age where you are not a kid and also not an adult. Sophia liked to buy clothes and do her makeup all the time. This obsession to look pretty is quite common in teenagers, so I didn't pay much attention to that in the beginning. One day when I came home from work, I saw Sophia applying melted chocolate on her face. I asked her, what is she doing? She replied she read at some websites chocolates make your skin look younger. I mean, I was surprised to hear that. But aren't you already young, darling? Oh, Mom, you won't get it. Please leave me alone. I could have scolded her for talking like that, but I always went easy on her, thinking she needs more love, as her father is not there for her. Being a single parent is not easy, and I didn't want to drive her away. She's everything I have. As more time passing, I noticed Sophia leaving for school wearing new clothes every day. I thought maybe she is earning for herself from her babysitting job. One day, I accidentally entered her room while she was taking a selfie standing in front of her mirror. There was nothing wrong with it, but just to keep an eye on her, I opened an Instagram account with a fake name and followed her. It was an open account, which means everyone can see her content. I realized she almost posts on everything from waking up in the morning and going to bed at night. A picture of her doing almost every basic thing there is on her Instagram profile. But there was nothing wrong in her pictures to hold her accountable for, so I commented in one of her pictures. What a lovely lady. That night I received a notification that she liked my comment. It was a picture on the beach. I took that one. My dear girl looked so pretty in that yellow dress. I was admiring how beautiful she is becoming when another comment took place in that picture. A guy named Monty commented, "Your hair needs red highlights." Some people are overly opinionated in social media, irrespective of others' choices. Anyways, Sophie and I had dinner and went to sleep. The next morning when I woke up, I heard the shower and the bathroom going on. Sophie never wakes up that early, so I thought there must have been a water leak. But as I tried to enter, twisting the doorknob, Sophie said from the inside, "I'm in here." I got surprised to see her wake up so early. I went to the kitchen to fix her breakfast. After 15 minutes, Sophie came out of the bathroom. "Are you feeling all right?" As I turned back, I saw the streaks of red highlight in her brown hair. She turned her hair red after that comment in her Insta profile. She left for school as if it wasn't a big deal. I wanted to say something, but again, I couldn't. With more days passing, I started to realize my daughter is severely obsessed with her looks, and she gives way too much importance to what people say on social media. I thought that this will pass, but had no idea things will get out of hand. She started to lose weight quite rapidly. She stopped eating her meals and only drank liquids. I couldn't stand the sight of her becoming a skeleton wrapped up in human skin. So I sat her down and decided to stop this nonsense once and for all. "Sophie, what are you doing?" "What? You barely eat. Look at yourself. You're becoming malnourished." "Oh God, this is a trend, Mom. I was becoming fat anyways." "What? Who told you that? Your fake Instagram followers? You know those people actually don't give a damn about you. How do you know? Do you follow my account? You're sick." "No, it's you who's becoming sick." "That's it. I'm taking you to a psychiatrist tomorrow." "I'm not your fucking toy!" She slammed out the door on my face and left the house. I sat on the couch weeping. I never thought my daughter can talk to me like that. An hour went by and she didn't come back. I was about to call 911 when my next door neighbor called me and said Sophie is lying unconscious on the sidewalk nearby. I rushed and saw she passed out on the street due to her poor health condition. We took her to the hospital and the doctor said apart from malnutrition, she's also suffering from bulimia. Whatever she eats these days, she even vomits that out secretly in her room. And all this because someone on Instagram called her fat. I took her to therapy after that, and she started to recover gradually. Her psychiatrist, Miss Miller, gave her some really good advice and tried to talk her out of the madness over social media. I was getting my hope back. The old, happy, and cheerful Sophie was coming back. After a month, she joined back to school. I returned her phone, thinking she will be fine now. I don't know what happened in school, but after coming home, she didn't talk. She just finished dinner and went to bed. Before going to her room, she looked at me and asked, "Mom, am I beautiful?" To which I replied, "You are the most beautiful girl in the world, my dear." I did the dishes and went to my room as well. I don't know why, but I casually opened my Instagram account and searched for Sophie's profile. As soon as her account opened, I saw her last picture received too many comments. It was a picture she took during her poor health phase. She was looking really skinny in that picture. I scrolled down to see the comments and I saw people flooded the comment section with negativity and hatred. People were calling her the skeleton girl and making fun of her. Some of them provoked her to kill herself because she's too ugly. Tears rolled down my eyes, thinking people can be this heartless and cruel to a 17-year-old teenager. The more I scrolled, the more I felt bad for her. I decided to tell her to delete her account and get rid of all of this. I was going back to bed when a new comment popped up in the same picture. It was from Sophie. As I read the comment, my heart sunk in fear. She replied, "Ending my ugly life. Goodbye." I sprinted out of the bed and ran to her. I twisted the doorknob, but Sophie locked it from inside. "Sophie! Sophie, open the door!" I started banging on her door, but she wouldn't open it. I took out the key from the wardrobe nearby and opened the door in one go. Sophie was lying on the floor, covered in blood. She slashed her wrist with a cutter. I called the ambulance and admitted her to the hospital. She's still unconscious. Doctors are saying she'll be fine. I've decided to take her somewhere far away from the city. I will keep fighting for her as long as I'm alive. All I want to request to the people of this generation is please, please be kind to each other. It doesn't matter how you look from the outside. Beauty has no face to it, only a loving heart. Hey guys, I see many of you commenting on my videos that this channel deserves 1 million subscribers. But I also see the percent of people who watch my videos aren't actually subscribed to the channel. So, if you like the content, want to support my channel, and want to see this channel reach 1 million subscribers, or maybe 500,000 subscribers, then go ahead, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. It's free, and you can always change your mind later. I used to stalk my ex's girlfriend on Instagram. I wasn't obsessed with him, and the breakup wasn't tough at all. Actually, I was the one who called it off. For the sake of this story, let's call him Ed. Ed and I met in college and dated for a year and a half before graduating. He was into music, and in the beginning, I loved the way he talked about pursuing it. But soon, I figured out that he was just a talker and not a doer. Everyone started to gear up for the next phase, as in what to do with life, which job to choose and where to settle. But Ed had no such plans. He was too laid back and depended on his father about his future. I, on the other hand, had always been a careerist. I wanted to become a writer, hence pursue higher studies. I told him that I'm going to apply for my PhD, and I'm planning to settle down in London. I asked him if he would like to come with me, because there are several options there if one wants to pursue music, but he gave me the same lazy reply that he will think about it. As the last semester came knocking at our door, everyone started to grab a job or internship or whatever they could. I too got a scholarship to a renowned university for my high studies. My professors and friends appreciated me for this big achievement, but Ed went all jealous and started to keep a distance from me. One day we went to a local pub and he was short on cash, so I pulled out my wallet to pay. Suddenly, he got all furious and started screaming at me. I got so embarrassed that I left the pub in tears. I was staying at his place back then. I stormed inside the bedroom and made up my mind that the next morning I'm going to leave this guy. Ed came home really late and really drunk. We had a fight again and things went out of hand. I left his house heartbroken and humiliated at 2 a.m. in the morning. I called a friend of mine and the next day left him a text that I was done with this relationship. A year went by and I shifted to London to do my PhD, but I kept following him on Instagram. A few months later, he posted a picture with another girl named Ashley, and that's how I came to know that she is his new girlfriend. I had no grudge against Ed, but I can't help but following Ashley. She is a pretty blonde girl, and I think she comes from a very simple background. Her most posts revolve around makeup and dressing up for parties. No hate or judgment, because she is also a woman like me thinking she found the man of her dreams. The first 4 months of following Ashley, I didn't see anything different. She used to post a lot of pictures of her and Ed, and I could always see them drinking and hanging around with people. But as time went by, her pictures changed. Or rather, her way of looking in pictures changed. She started doing loud and heavy makeup, which made her look like a creature from another world. Before, she used to put light-colored lipsticks and nude makeup mostly, but now she only wears blood-red lip colors, and the blush she uses is too pink to be called beautiful. I could tell she was trying to look different, or I don't know what was happening in her life. A week went by and I was trying to stay out of whatever I was doing. One day I was studying and making some notes for my research paper when I received a notification on my phone. I opened my phone and saw it was from Instagram. It was a post by Ashley. She was lying on a couch with plaster in her hand. What the? These people post anything and everything these days, I said to myself. I read the comment section where someone asked her what had happened to her, to which she replied, "I fell down from the stairs. Thank God my boyfriend was home. He's the one who took me to the hospital." I don't know why, but it felt like too much info to me. A week after that, Ashley posted a video flaunting her wedding ring, and I came to know that Ed and she is about to get married that too in London. She later shared a video of her doing makeup. That's when I realized I have to meet her to stop her from taking this wrong decision. Yes, marrying Ed is a wrong decision, because I could see he was doing the same thing with her that he did to me. The night Ed came home drunk and started the fight, I took a stand for myself. Eventually, he slapped me so hard that it resulted in bruises on my cheek. I haven't told anyone about this, and I didn't take a step against him, which I know I definitely should have. I kept following Ashley's every post, and one evening I saw her uploading a video where she's seen partying in a nightclub in London. I realized that this is my chance. I have to meet her. I drove to the club and waited in the car for her to come outside once. I waited for 2 hours and finally, at around 1 a.m., I saw her coming out. She stood on the sidewalks and lit a cigarette. I walked to her. "Ashley." "Yes? Do I know you?" "No, but I know you. I don't think you should marry Ed." "Excuse me?" "He hits you, doesn't he? That's why you have this loud makeup, right?" "I don't know what you're saying." She turned to walk away and I grabbed her hand. "Ashley, please, I'm saying this for your own good. You can't keep tolerating this guy." She freed her hand from my grasp and smiled at me. I was stunned to see her level of stupidity. She said in a calm voice, "Thanks, but I can take care of myself. Stay out of my personal life, please," and walked away. I came home with a sad face. After hearing her, I couldn't overstep anymore. I got married the next month and I stopped following Ashley. Time went by and I almost forgot about this too, when a piece of shocking news reached me. Someone posted on the Instagram page of our college about Ed's sudden demise. He died last week in his own home. Everyone knew he was an alcoholic. He drank too much one night and stumbled down the stairs of his house, hitting his head. His wife, Ashley, was sleeping in her room and didn't know until she came out in the morning. But it was too late for Ed. The college group posted about the time and venue of his funeral. I won't say I was happy to hear this news, because no matter what, a person's death is always tragic. But I felt a little relieved that Ashley got saved from his physical abuse. She also inherited Ed's property, and I was sure it would be enough for her to start fresh. I attended the funeral yesterday. Ashley was standing near the open casket, wiping her tears, while everyone consoled her for her husband's death. I went to her with an awkward face and said, "I'm sorry, Ashley, I didn't introduce myself earlier because..." She took my hands into hers and squeezed my palm, saying, "Thank you for your concern. Didn't I tell you? I can take care of myself." I don't use Instagram anymore, and the reason is my fault. In high school, I started modeling. I had to tie up with lots of media pages and brands to update my experience in the field. For that, I uploaded almost every other day. But to avoid any negative attention and creepy comments, I tried to keep a low profile. I never posted any explicit photos because almost everyone in my family followed me on Instagram. One day I was going through comments on a recent picture I uploaded. I was casually scrolling when one comment caught my eye. It was from a profile named Your Wish My Command. I kind of liked the name, but the comment was a bit odd. It read, "Whenever you need help, being famous is competitive these days." I opened the profile to do further research and saw pictures of gothic art. Most of his contents were based on voodoo rituals, witchcraft, and occults. But people try to gain attention in every way possible these days, so I ignored it. A few weeks later, my uncle came to visit with his daughter. I was close to my cousin until she went to college and got into modeling too. She got aloof from me, and once I started modeling, her jealousy went to another level. Let's call her Jill. So Jill came to stay with us for a while. My father and my uncle were planning to sell our family home, hence they needed to work together to prepare the papers and other official necessities. My mom kind of forced me to share my room with Jill, because the guest room was given to my uncle. She wanted to be a bitch, but chose not to. Probably she couldn't gather the courage to tease me while staying under my dad's roof. Anyways, we both had to click pictures for our profiles and upload them, so there were times when Jill and I both used to dress up and stand in front of the mirror to get a nice click. Things were going fine until one day I crossed 10,000 followers, while Jill remained at 5,000. Needless to say, she followed my account. She was pissed off the entire day and didn't say a single word to me. I didn't bother much. I was making a video thanking my followers for their support and love when Jill walked into the room with a glass of orange juice and intentionally spilt it on me. It took a fraction of a second for a huge brawl to take place. I screamed at her, calling a jealous bitch, and she called me a slutbag. Our parents stepped in to stop our fight, and I stormed out of the house in anger. I went to the local park and sat on a corner bench. I was feeling very angry, and suddenly, I remembered about that weird account in Instagram. Your Wish, My Command. I sent him a text. "Hi." I got an immediate response. "Well, hello there. Can you help me?" "Depends on what kind of help you need." Can you hack into an account and remove it, like, forever?" "Haha, I can do so much more than that. What is the name of the account?" "Jill Craig _1 and only. I'll need the phone number for that, and her email." I know what I was going to do wasn't only wrong, but a criminal offense, but I did it anyhow. I was out of my mind, no doubt. I gave him my cousin's phone number and email ID. Just after that, Your Wish, My Command blocked me, and I realized this guy was just messing with me. Although I was calmed down by then, I told myself. I returned home and my uncle made Jill apologize to me. Eventually, I apologized too, and the matter got sorted out that night. But it was always in the back of my mind that I have indeed shared her phone number and email to God knows who. I wanted to tell her, but I knew she will play the victim, bringing out the previous fight, and I will be in huge trouble for doing what I did. Few days went by and I almost forgot about the account, when I suddenly overheard a phone conversation between Jill and her boyfriend one night. She was saying, "Yeah, I've reported this account, but every time I block it, someone reopens it with the same username and drops creepy messages. I'm telling you, it's the same guy with the name Your Wish My Command." As soon as I heard that, my hands turned cold in fear. Shit, I have appointed a stalker on my own cousin. I could see the tension on Jill's face, but still kept quiet. I was making mistakes after mistakes just to keep out of trouble, but that only led to more trouble in the upcoming future. It was a Saturday night. Jill and I went clubbing with some of our common friends. We were partying really hard and I got pretty drunk. What happened next is a combined memory of fragments, but overall, it was like this, and it was terrifying. I was sitting at the bar and Jill was dancing in the crowd. I could see her jumping and tossing her hair here and there, when suddenly I saw a man dressed in a robe-like thing standing behind her. I mean, I was intoxicated, but trust me, I didn't hallucinate that. For a moment, the entire club shifted to a slow-motion movie scene, where everyone is dancing on the floor, except the man dressed in a creepy black robe. He noticed me seeing him, and he lifted one arm to wave at me. At the time, he whispered something to Jill's ear, and she started to follow him like stupid. She was drunk too. I got up because I knew that man had bad intentions, but there were crazy party animals everywhere. By the time I reached the exit, I saw Jill being abducted by two men. They grabbed her and forced her into the back seat of the car. The man in the robe stood near the car and waved me goodbye before hopping into it. The car then drove away at full speed, and I collapsed on the floor crying for help. My friends came out and they called 911 hearing what happened. By the time the cops reached, the car was gone, and so was my cousin. I received a text after 15 minutes. It read, "Wish granted. Target destroyed." I freaked out and told everything to the cops in the presence of my parents and uncle. After a tedious search of one long week, the cops finally found Jill unconscious near a roadside dumpster. She was beaten badly and can't remember a thing that happened to her or where she was taken by those mysterious men. The cops left no stones unturned to search for those men, and I gave them every detail I could. Finally, they caught them, and it came out to be a group of kidnappers who are also associated with women trafficking. Jill hadn't been physically assaulted, but her wounds are enough to make me live a life full of guilt and despair. My uncle has cut all ties with us, and my parents don't see me the way they used to earlier. I'm now just a jealous bitch who shoved her cousin into a terrible fate out of anger. I hope those guys rot in jail forever, so that they can't hurt anyone anymore. For me, I will spend the rest of my life in culpability and solitude.